Well, a very, very, very warmest of welcomes to you. Hi, it's Kasim. For those of you who haven't joined me before, my name is Kasim, or you can call me Cass. You can call me whatever you want. But welcome to my podcast. Welcome to Journal Entries. Um, there is so much that I want to talk to you about this week. I can't even begin to explain to you. So much has happened. There's so many places where I want to go. To be honest with you, I don't even think I'm going to be able to go through everything with you this week, but I'm going to do my best to try and share with you as much of the thoughts that I've been thinking about as possible. Hopefully, they can add some value to the quality of your life. Hopefully, they can, in some way, help you to become a higher, fuller expression of yourself. If, in case you haven't heard of me before and you're not familiar with me, basically, some number of years ago, I had reached quite a lot of things that I had wanted in my life, right? And I decided that, well, I didn't decide, but basically, I was forced into a position where I was kind of like, look, I have achieved a lot of the things that I want. What the hell am I going to do with the next like 50, 60, 70 years of my life, depending on how long I live? What the hell am I actually going to do? Right? I've earned a lot of money. I've traveled a lot. I've been in relationships, right? I've done a lot of the things. I've experienced failure and I've experienced success. So I've done a lot of things already, and I'm not even in my 30s. So what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? And that's really where I decided that, well, I didn't decide, but I went through a process where I essentially started thinking about what I living what you call an intentional life. I basically, instead of kind of just allowing life to flow and allowing life to go as it is, I decided to become very, very intentional about the future of my life. And one of the things that I did is I started to write down, what did I want to do? What problem did I want to solve? What kind of lifestyle did I want to live? In fact, I can share with you that one of the things that I wrote down is what I call my 10-year vision. Now, this 10-year vision really was, I guess when you're driving on on a road, there are two that you're either driving on the left-hand side of the road. Well, actually, technically, you're always driving on the left-hand side of the road. But if you're driving, um, in you always have two lines. There's lines on the left and there's lines on the right hand side, and they set kind of the direction in which you go. Of course, you can veer off and go left or right or whatever, but essentially, the lines dictate a lot of the path moving forward for you. And essentially, this 10-year vision became the lines for me. It didn't mean that I couldn't veer off or go a different path or something like that, but I set a 10-year vision, which was to write 10 books. Every single year, I was going to write one book, and that was going to, in some way, that was going to be impacting my bigger mission, right, which is to impact 1 million men, to help them to become their highest, fullest expression of who they're capable of becoming, to help men essentially who want to change their lives, who've had difficult backgrounds, who've come from really difficult situations in their life, to start stepping on the path of personal development, to understand that you can go through loads of like a really shit time in your life, that you can go through adversity, that you can grow from you can go from obscurity and you can rise to the riches, you can build an incredible life, you can have power, you can be successful, you can step into your masculinity, whatever it may. In fact, you can also step into your femininity, however that may manifest itself, right? And that's really the overarching arc. Sometimes people say to me, Kasim, why did you decide men? Why not women? Why not disabled kids? And the thing is that I looked into my heart, man. I really looked at, what did I know and what did I feel passionate about? One of the questions that students ask me all the time, which actually was one of the reasons why I wrote the book, my goal setting book, is always asking me, like, how do I decide what I should do with my life? And I always say, this is a common piece of advice that I give everybody. If you're looking to figure out what you want to do with your life, look for whatever pisses you off and makes you angry, or look to what you know. Look to solve a problem that you or yourself are experiencing, right? So let's look at the first one. If you are going through a really hard time and you're like not going through a hard time, but if you're coming from obscurity, if you're coming from an area where perhaps you're not sure about what you should be doing, look at whatever makes you angry. Look at whatever pisses you off, because in whatever pisses you off, they will be a problem for you to solve. And there's a reason why it pisses you off. If you listen to very successful people, many very successful people say, and if you hear how they're described as perfectionists. They're described as people who want to get everything right. They're people who want to have everything together. Well, if that is true, and successful people are perfectionists and they like to fix things and they like to solve problems, then why don't you solve a problem that really pisses you off? Because one, you're going to have fuel to solve it. And two, if you listen to people who usually have an issue with something, is because they usually have a way to solve it. They usually have seen a way to do it better. And so they have something which is unique. And again, I think this is work that we have to do on ourselves, because in order to really pursue that problem and go to solve that issue, you have to have a certain level of narcissism about you, a certain level of ego, right? You got to have a certain level of self-esteem about yourself. You've got to actually believe in you, in your ability to figure things out, in your ability to be unique. And I'll be honest with you, I know that a lot of people don't think that they're unique. I know that a lot of people don't think that they're different, that they're special, that they've got something to offer this planet. And if you're not in that space right now where you're listening to me and you're like, Kasim, actually, I do believe in myself. If you're not at that space where you're like, actually, Kasim, I could solve that problem. And actually, Kasim, I do think that my way of seeing this could really help other people, and it could really solve this problem, and it could really move this issue forward. If you're not at that place, then my thing to you is start doing the work. That may look like journaling, that may look like asking better quality questions, that may mean look like counseling, that may look like surrounding yourself with people who are deeper thinkers than you are, or people who have better knowledge of you, right? Or that may be look like pushing yourself to the edges of your capacity. I was saying to some students the other day that my observation has been that most people are really only operating at about 30% of who they are. This is what I said to the students in the assembly. I said, look, most of you in this room, you are not even trying. You are not even pushing to the edges of your capacity. You just are not, right? And part of the reason why you're not is because you're mainly operating in areas that are not naturally your gifting. You're operating in areas where you want to be loved, you want to be accepted, you want to be validated, you want to be included, but not necessarily those areas which may make you feel as though you're misunderstood, but actually help you succeed, but actually put you in and leverage you to be in your strengths. So that's just something for you to think about. And I ask you and wonder, what would happen if you went from operating at 30% of who you are and you took that to 70? Obviously, that's a huge leap, but imagine in 2 years of in 2 years of working hard and operating in your strengths, the level of progress, success, and momentum that can happen for you. Just imagine that. It's just something to think about. The other thing, going back to what I was originally talking about, the other thing that I suggest to students and other people that they do if they're trying to figure out how to move forward and what they should do with their life is I say to them, find uh, um, a problem that in your find a problem to solve that you yourself are experiencing. So, for example, the reason it's interesting because if you look, earlier when I was saying to you, I have my 10-year vision of books I want to write. So these books, if you look at them, they're actually all stacked on top of each other. All the books are basically the process of what it takes for somebody to change their life, right? Because my thing was, I didn't want to focus on step 10 or step 8 of changing your life. I wanted to help men with changing the first two steps. What did I need to do? The basics, the fundamentals, right? I'm talking about the keys, the very foundations of what it takes to improve and change your life. That's what I wanted to help men on. So if you look at my first book, The Best Kept Secret, Unlocking the Raw, Then you look at book 2, How to Set Goals. Then you look at book 3, The 5 Spheres of Life, the keys to understanding how the world works. Number 4, how to give yourself an edge leading up to 2080. Number 5, how to be happy today, not tomorrow. Ideas on compounded happiness. Number 6, why am I not getting what I want? Number 7, you are dangerous to part to the dark side of life. Number 8, the role of a parent. Put your mask on first. Number 9, the 6 stages of life. What do I do now? Number 10, kidulthood to manhood, keys to self-mastery. If you look at all those books are really about problems that I myself have experienced. I know at some point, as somebody who wants to have children, I'm gonna have to look at the role of a father. I'm not there yet, which is why that book is so. What book is it? The book about parenting is book 8. So that will be in what, 6 years? I'll be writing that book, right? If you look at The Best Kept Secret was the first book that I wrote, and part of the reason why I wrote that book is because I needed to understand what, what was my potential. Like, what was I good at? What was I not good at? Like, what was I actually capable of doing? And I've got to tell you, as I say, a lot of us, we are not operating at our peak. We, and the thing is, I remember many years ago, I read a book by John Maxwell, and John Maxwell, I think it was his leadership book. He said that momentum is a leader's best friend, that you can solve many, 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 many problems if you have got momentum. In the same token, I will take that further and say that, look, brother, if you are going to reach your potential and you are going to knock down success after success, and you're going, and remember, let me stop right here. I'm not saying success is the totality of life. There are all multiple facets of life that are really important, right? Health, vitality, and remember, success is how you define it. But if you're going to knock down all these things and become successful, you're going to need to operate at high frequency, right? You're gonna need to have your battery charged. You're gonna need, as Brendan Burchard said, if you want to live the charged life, you're gonna need to be charged, right? One of the things that being charged requires is you need energy. So a huge amount of this is getting sleep, eating healthily, stop taking drugs, stop doing things that weaken your body, that remove energy from you. You cannot operate at the highest levels without having vitality and health. And people say, "Oh, well, where should I start with this?" Well, might be one of the areas that you might want to start. One of the areas that you might want to start is really looking at how much sleep you're getting and what you're putting in your body and what you are exposing your mind to. And I'm talking about obviously like drugs, I'm talking about food, I'm talking about drinking enough water, I'm talking about walking, exercising, going to the gym. These, again, remember, are basic things. But in order to get momentum, you need to be able to do the things that you're capable of doing. And this is one of the big issues that I think a lot of us have. A lot of us, one of the big issues that we have is we want to do things that we want to do, not the things that we're capable of doing. In order to gain momentum, just do what you're capable of doing and keep doing it consistently. And if you keep doing that, you're going to get momentum. And once you gain momentum, a lot of other things become a lot easier, as John Maxwell said. So going back to what I was saying, and so what I would recommend to you, and again, this is a recommendation, and you know what I always say to people: you can do whatever it is that you want, right? I'm not your boss. You can do absolutely whatever it is that you want with your life. But what I would recommend to you is look at a problem that you're experiencing in your life and try to solve it. If you've really struggled with ADHD, go and literally spend the next 2 years studying everything about ADHD and write a book about it, do a podcast about it, do videos about it, write a blog about it. If your thing is that you've struggled a lot with money, and money is a one thing that you just can never seem to master, spend the next 5 years studying everything you can about money. Learn, where is money from? How do they make it? What's the history of it? Right? How does it look at different ages of life? What are the different currencies of money? How does where you live affect money? Right? How does how you're grown up affect money? And just start there. You would be surprised at how many people do not have, let me go back. One of the ways to become valuable in the marketplace is to have knowledge, right? Some people have skill, some people have a product, all that sort of stuff. But one of the ways in which we become, oh, I hear a buzzing sound. One of the ways in which we become valuable in the marketplace is to have knowledge, right? Is to be knowledgeable an area. And what I would share with you is I wonder whether perhaps you don't have the skill, perhaps you don't have the money or the resources, but could you acquire the knowledge that would make you valuable in the marketplace? Is part of the reason why I wrote my books. Well, actually, there are many reasons why I decided to use books as my vehicle. Weirdly enough, let me talk about this because this is actually quite important. I'm going to get back to this in a second. But you may have noticed that I no longer have my face on these videos, right? Obviously, those of you who are listening to this podcast, you wouldn't notice, but basically, previously, I used to have all my videos. Whenever I used to do stuff online, I'd put my face in them. But as of this week, I've decided that I no longer will put my face when I produce content. And part of the reason why this is because I was listening to something this week which was talking about anonymity. Basically, they were talking about how can you achieve success but still maintain privacy? How can you reach high levels? Essentially, they were saying that look, there are some people who want success, but they also want fame. There are some people who want fame but don't really care about success. And I was thinking about this for myself because I was like, well, what is it that I want? And was thinking about this, and I was like, to be honest with you, I don't really care that much about success. My apologies. Let me rephrase that. I don't really care that much about fame, but what I do care a lot about is success. I want to be successful. I want to do good in life. I want to reach the men that I want to reach with my books and doing this podcast and stuff. But I don't really, I don't really care for people to be like, "Oh my God, you're amazing, Kasim." I've gone past all of that part of my life. I don't need to be affirmed by anybody. It's wonderful. Every now and then somebody saying, "Oh, Kasim, like what you said really impacts me." But in the great scheme of things, I'm not really looking for fame. And so I decided that if I remove my face out of it, then people focus on the message and the material and the knowledge that I'm sharing with them instead of me being the main vehicle. In other words, I want to ensure that if I die, people still read my books, right? That this information is still reaches the right people who need to hear it. And so I want to remove myself out of the equation. So there is something that I've learned this week. I'd never really thought about it like that, but so all my stuff now, and this goes back to what I was going to say earlier on, the vehicle, because I was having this conversation with someone, a student earlier on in the not this week, last week. I was saying to them, look, if you want to become successful, you're going to need to choose your vehicle. What vehicle are you going to use in order to become successful and get whatever it is that you want to get? You need a vehicle. Is it going to be books? Is it going to be a product? Is it going to be a podcast? Is it going to be radio? Is it going to be television? Is it going to be whatever it is going to be? You need a vehicle basically to getting whatever it is that you want. The vehicle that I chose is that I chose the vehicle of books and online content. Now, I've removed video from that, but I will still produce audio versions of this to the world and share it out there. But I just wanted to think for you to share that. So let's go back to originally what I was saying. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I did think that it's important, just something important to share with you because that was something that I've been thinking a lot about this week, whether I want fame or whether I want success or both. Yeah, so that's been interesting. So going back to my point. So going back to my point is, I would then recommend that the second thing is look at whether you have a problem in your life that you can solve, a problem that you're having an issue with, and then try your best to try to solve that. And that, I'm telling you, if you don't know what you want to do, that will give you at least a 5-year mission, a 5-year calling to go and solve that issue. This thing might be depression, it might be anxiety, it might be social anxiety. And the thing is, you may not have the knowledge now, but you can acquire the knowledge. Because I know some of you are going to be listening to me and you're like, Kasim, I don't really have any knowledge. I don't really see where I can add value. And that's why I said to you earlier on, your thing might be that you need to do some work on your confidence before you can. And actually, the fact that you start pursuing this route and start heading down trying to solve an issue that you're experiencing in your life, which may be the fact that you don't have confidence to pursue in itself, will give you momentum, which will momentum will also give you confidence, because momentum builds confidence, because it's like, I've knocked down that and I've knocked down that and I've done that and I've achieved that. And the more that you keep doing of that, the more success you're going to achieve. I mean, it's this really incredible uh, cycle that you get into, which can create these incredible results. But as I say, it's up to you, and it's your life, and it's just something that I thought that I would share with you, and I hope that it adds value to the quality of your life. Okay, so let's go to the other thing that I wrote down here that I wanted to touch on. Well, hold on. Before we continue, actually, let me ensure that I finish this point. So, is there anything else that I wanted to say on this? I don't think there is. I've pretty much shared all that I can. If you have something that I've missed or something that you want to add on to this, just send me a message. And I will definitely look at it and try to address it in the next video. Okay, cool. So let's look at the next point. You cannot have an insecure attachment or secure uh, attachment across all areas of your life. I repeat, you cannot have an insecure attachment or secure attachment across all areas of your life. So I've been looking at attachment theory. Attachment theory, as many of you know, is work that was done by Bowlby. If you don't know, it was Bowlby did some work. And attachment theory is essentially how we show up and the dynamics that we show up in our relationships. And part of why I was listening to this and this came up is because I was trying to understand, can you have it all? Is basically what I was trying to figure out. Can you have everything that you want in your life? Is it possible? And I discovered that you can have whatever it is that you want, just not all at the same time. And I wrote this in my second book, the goal setting book, right? In that book, one of the steps, it's a 6 steps, and one of the steps, I say that you can have whatever it is that you want, you just can't have it all at the same time. And what essentially why this is important and is linked is because if you can have everything, but you can't have it all at once, you may have areas of your life where you're spinning 2 or 3 plates, which are going okay, and then at some point a fourth plate comes into play, and it throws and unhinges and balances your life. And a huge amount of this was me thinking about Kasim. There are going to be moments in your life where you've got areas of your life which aren't perfect. But that doesn't mean that you're fake. That doesn't mean that you're not competent in the other areas of your life. And I say this to you because I essentially haven't spoken to my family in quite a long time. And part of the reason I haven't spoken to my family is because I've been going through a phrase called going into your cave. I've been going through a process of self-healing and self-discovery. I essentially needed time to figure out who I was, what did I want, where did I want to go, what was important to me, what wasn't important to me. Like, I needed to figure out who I was. And for me personally, as Kasim, I just couldn't do that in the context of my family. There was just too many things that are raw, and there were too many boxes, and there were too many um conditions. You know, in therapy, we have this thing called conditions of worth. My worth was very heavily tied to the approval of my parents. Therefore, in order for me to become my own man and for me to really discover who I was and to pursue who I wanted to be, I had to detach. I couldn't do it in the context of being near my family. And I've been feeling somewhat guilty recently because I felt like, well, Kasim, yes, whilst you're doing the process of discovering who you want to be, you are also neglecting your family. But I've had to remember that sometimes, there is a, when you go on a plane, they say you have to put your mask on first. And a huge amount of the problem that we have as people, and particularly people in the Black community, is that we sacrifice ourselves for everybody else, for our family, right? Groupthink. We will sacrifice our needs and what we want for the group to be loved, to be accepted, to not be left and abandoned. So whilst we are not abandoned by the group, we abandon ourselves. And so I've had to really, really explore and give myself grace and give myself patience, because there's a lot of things that I needed to figure out, particularly around my sexuality, because it was an area where I needed to figure out what was it, like what was going on for me. But I didn't want to be shamed, and I didn't want to be asked questions all the time. When are you going to get married? Because it's hard, when people ask you questions that you yourself haven't yet discovered the answers to. And the thing is, and this is what I've been journaling about a lot over the last couple of years, because I've been in this area, what I call limbo, where I'm not yet what I would classify as successful, because I'm writing books, but my books aren't New York Times bestsellers. They aren't, Sunday Times bestsellers, but I'm writing them and they're selling and they're impacting people, and people are sending me messages of how the books are impacting them. I'm doing courses and talking to people and training and doing all of this kind of stuff, and it's all doing well, but it isn't the level that I've wanted to. But also, on the other hand, I'm thinking about my family, and I'm thinking about sacrifices, and I'm thinking about what I've left behind. And I'm just trying to figure my path through. I'm trying to figure things out for myself. And it's meant that I've been in this kind of duality, this limbo, this place where I'm neither there nor here, if this kind of makes sense. Um, and it can cause a lot of dissonance. It can cause a lot of unease, because it's kind of like, okay, so you've given this up or you've made this sacrifice to get this, but you haven't yet got what it is that you want. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well, is it really worth it? And that's what I've essentially been thinking a lot about. Is it really worth it to make sacrifices and then go years in limbo, right? I've given up not being in sales so that I can pursue this writing and trying to add value to people through books and doing these podcasts and stuff like this. But it's kind of like, until it becomes successful, there is this always a looming question at the back of my mind of, is it worth it? And if it doesn't work, was the sacrifice worth it? You know what I mean? And I've just been thinking about this a lot. It may just be me and you guys can't really relate. But it's just made me think, particularly this week, that look, you can't be successful in every aspect of your life. You can't be unsuccessful in every aspect of your life. Sometimes I have people come into therapy, and one of the things that I like to do when we're in therapy is I like to explore because clients will come in and they'll tell you about how lots of bad things have happened in their life and how things aren't working out for them, and how they're struggling with this and they're struggling with that. And the question that I always like to ask them is, well, so what has worked out? Well, what are your strengths? Well, what are your leanings? Well, what have you succeeded at? And a lot of clients struggle with that. They struggle to look at where they've succeeded. They struggle to look at where they're doing well, because they've just so used to rumination. They're so used to just talking about their problems in their life that they don't realize that they've got momentum in other areas of their life. And I have to remind them that, look, it's okay to have anxiety, depression, etc., but actually you're a great father, but actually you're a great brother, but actually you've managed to get past your GCSEs, but actually you've managed to get a bachelor's degree, right? Like, there is movement, there is room, there's growth. It's just perhaps not the growth that you would have wanted, and it's not the growth that has is not at the level that you would have wanted it, but there is still growth, which is why I think the Buddhists and the Western the Eastern medicine and thinking and way of living is so much about gratitude, right? I have to remind myself on a constant basis that I have been through a lot, and man, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still fighting on. I still want to do good with my life. I still am trying to press forward, and I want to become successful, and I want to help other people. I want to make a dent in the universe. And this isn't in a selfish way. This just is that I just want to do stuff. I'm here on this planet, so I might as well do something with it. So essentially, that's what I've been thinking about this week, and I've been journaling about one of the things anyway. And I don't know what comes up for you as you think about that. Um, and just living in limbo, you know, living in being misunderstood, living in that place where people are like, well, you're not really where you want to be, and you've made this sacrifice, but being okay with that. That not, when you're watching, when somebody plants seeds, let's say sweet corn, there is the majority of the time when the seed corn is growing, it's not going to look like a lot. It's just going to look like a plant. And then it will be in the last months that you're going to get the sweet corn, and it's going to grow quite rapidly. And then eventually you're going to get some sweet corn. And I think it's important to remember that. But the majority of it is growth, right? And it's not massive growth, it's a steady step forward to of moving ahead. And I think that one of the ways in which we can live with constant growth while still not where we are is to be grateful, to use gratitude, you know, to reflect, to look back at our life and see where we've come from, right? 1%. I always, it was in that book, goal setting, the goal setting book that I wrote, that I said that, a lot of us, we want like 50% growth, 20% growth. But I remind everybody that 1% growth or movement, right? Or shift every day over a year is 360. 360, 365 days is a full circle. It is a turnaround. People forget that a year is a long time, and you can make incredible leaps in a year. Incredible leaps. Like, I have met people who've radically changed their life in months. I've met people who've been drinking and were addicted to this and addicted to that, and they've completely turned it around. They've completely turned it around. They've gone teetotal. They haven't been pushed. They haven't been persuaded by everybody. They've just decided, and then they've moved forward, and that is it. And people forget that as human beings, we can do that. The power of choice. We don't need to reach the bottom of the barrel in order to change our life. We can change our life straight away. We can change our life now. We can change our life literally by making the decision to change our life, by living intentionally, right? And I think a lot of us forget that. We forget that there is a lot of power that we've been given as human beings, in that we have choice. We can choose. And what's interesting is, as we make choices for ourselves, there's all kinds of other incredible things, particularly around happiness and joy and self-esteem, that begin to activate within us. Hmm. So that's also just something for you to think about, but I don't want to go too much on that tangent. But it's just something, just something to think about, something to think about. The last thing that I want to share with you, which has been coming up for me this week, I went to a Reading University, and at Reading University they had a community festival. And in the community festival, there was a bunch of talks which were being had, and I went to a lot of these talks. And one of the talks was titled "Music, Fandom, Emotions, and Anti-Racism." And one of the things that was said in that is a lot of people love music, but they go to a concert and are brought into a political cascade. I repeat, a lot of people love music, but go to a concert and are brought into a political cascade. It's interesting, because when I was younger, one of the things that I always said is I don't want to get into politics. I wasn't interested in politics. I'm not a political person. But as I've got older, I have found myself in almost a very contradictory position because I've spent a huge amount of my time looking at politics. Not because I've wanted to, but because if you care about anything, truly care about anything, you are going to interact with politics in one way or another. And what this was basically just reminding me of, and as I was thinking about this man was saying, is I was thinking so much about how a lot of us, we just want to live. We don't want to get involved in politics. We don't want to get involved with identity. I think it was in my last video where I was talking about my sexuality, and I was saying, look, whenever I meet people, most people don't know that I'm a bisexual man. They don't know it because I don't talk about it, because it is the least um biggest area of my life. I only talk about it here because I know it helps people when I talk about this stuff and I speak about it openly. But outside of these chats, I don't really talk about my sexuality because it's just not really something that I consider to be important. Now, in me saying that, I also have to recognize that just because that area, the reason why I'm saying this is because sexuality at the moment is obviously a very political issue, particularly around gender and gender ideology and things like that. But I also have to recognize that just because that area of my life isn't political and I don't want to talk about it, it doesn't mean that there are other things that I'm not so political about, right? And so my point being is that I've had to learn that you cannot escape politics, right? You say you want to go to music, but music, a lot of musicians use their music as political tools. And I guess my final thing that I want to say to you is, if you are somebody who you've not really thought much about politics and you've tried to evade it, then I ask you to start looking at it. I ask you to start exploring politics, how politics works, why so many people who want to make change in the world go towards politics. There must be a reason. Well, I say there must be. There is a reason, right? And I just implore you to start looking at that, because if all of these people are all looking at politics and so many people study politics and a lot of people want power and success, end up in one way or another involved in politics, I would encourage you that if you are somebody who wants to become successful, you want to make change in the world, you want to do good, that you do not evade politics. You cannot separate change and progress without some level of politics being involved. And what I would share with you is that bad things might be happening because good people are refusing to get involved in politics. I will leave it there. Just something for you to think about. So, as always, you know what I always say. Thank you very much for listening. I don't know, if this has been of any value to you at all or not. But I hope it has. I hope perhaps it's ignited something inside of you where you can start down this path and down this journey. Um, and yeah, I hope things really show up for you this week and you really start that process of looking at yourself, personal development, looking at ways you can looking at ways you can improve as a person. By the way, just to answer what that noise was a Google notice. That's what it was. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I will speak to you very soon. Don't forget to send me a message if there's anything you want me to talk about or that you have views on. Thank you. Bye for now.